This is Transistor.fm.
Product People would not be possible without the support from the fine folks at Sprintly. If you're building software with a team of people and you need to make your development process more transparent for the whole company, Sprintly is for you. Now anyone can check in and see what stage certain features are at. Founders and product managers can get the pulse of the whole company in one place. I want you to try Sprintly for free, www.sprint.ly. After your trial is over, use my coupon code ProductPeopleTV2013, all one word, for 10% off. This week we chat with New York-based entrepreneur Spencer Fry. He's built some really cool products and been a part of some really cool teams, including Carbon Made. Right now he's working on a new product called Uncover, and he's got lots of advice for product people, especially when it comes to sales and marketing. Let's listen in. Hi, I'm Justin, and this is Product People, the podcast focused on great products and the people who make them. Today, I'm joined by Spencer Fry, co-founder and CEO of TypeFrag, Carbon Made, and currently working on a new project called Uncover. Spencer, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
How are you doing today?
Doing very well. We actually have some nice weather in New York City finally, after about 2 to 3 weeks of ridiculously hot weather. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What's hot for New York?
Mid 90s, and then the humidity is terrible here.
Oh yeah.
The asphalt in the large buildings, but today we kind of have a breeze, so it's been nice. I think it's like low 80s today.
Perfect. We had I'm in British Columbia in kind of the southern part, and it can get really hot here. We had 100 degrees Fahrenheit yesterday, and but there's no humidity. It's just like dry heat basically, which makes a big difference.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. And I bike everywhere, so it's really tough, biking to work and everything with like a sweaty backpack.
Yeah, so do I. The heat does make a huge difference actually when you're biking around. It's nice when it's like in the morning and it's cooler, but if it's middle of the day, it's not so fun. Well, Spencer, maybe we could start by just having you give us a background on yourself. Where did you grow up? And maybe talk about how you got into building stuff in the first place.
Sure. So I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, around and actually on the campus of Yale University, because both my parents are professors there.
Okay.
So at a very early age, I'm 29 now, so I think at around 10 or 11 years old, I had really, really high-speed internet. While my other friends were kind of on dial-up modems, I was on Yale's internet. So,
oh, no way.
Yeah.
So that would have been like one of the original like T1 connections or T3.
Yeah, I think we were even at T3 at that point. Yeah, so that was like 94 or something.
Wow.
Earlier. 94, 95. So I was, browsing the internet all the time because everything was so fast. And I just got really interested in like video games, and which actually a lot of entrepreneurs, that's kind of like where they started. And I got really interested in video games, and I started kind of putting up little sites that, like gaming websites, like news about different video games. And that eventually led kind of to TypeFrag.
And what is TypeFrag?
Well, so kind of in early college, I was messing around with different, internet stuff for like my whole teens and high school days, and actually like started a small web hosting company and like shell service for IRC and all this craziness. But I was always like very into video games, and TypeFrag founded that when I was like a sophomore in college, so I think 19 years old, and that was kind of my big first internet success. And TypeFrag was voice over IP for computer game players. So kind of in the Counter-Strike days, everyone used to kind of play together, but it was very hard to communicate with your teammates. There was built-in voice, but it was very bad quality.
Gotcha.
So we launched TypeFrag so that, teams and friends could kind of talk together while playing the game.
How did you how did you figure out like quality voice over IP when you're 19?
There was a small community using the software called Ventrilo, which is still around today, and it's basically like a standalone app that was very, very lightweight, very poorly designed, but the voice quality was really high, and it also supported kind of up to 400 people at once on a single server. And a lot of these like games, some of them had built-in voice at the time, but the quality was really, really low, and it was capped to your team. So we kind of saw an opportunity there, whereas like you didn't have to be connected to the games and talk to your teammates, and the whole like esports revolution that's really, really hot today in the last few years was just starting to get going. So we kind of saw an opportunity there to build TypeFrag and to like allow teams to be able to use this voice service.
Yeah. And so you built this with a co-founder or a friend?
Yeah, built it with a co-founder. We both kind of did the early development stuff, and he then kind of took on the lead role as the developer, and I took on kind of the CEO, sales, marketing role. And we were actually, it's interesting because now people are doing podcasts a lot more frequently in the last 5 years, even 10 years. But in the early 2000s, there weren't that many podcasts, but there were a lot of gaming podcasts.
Yeah.
And so we were one of the first to actually market on a podcast of any company out there on the web. I think in like 2003.
Yeah. Wow. Really early on.
Yes. Super, super early on. And there was like kind of live broadcasts of these games. And we got in early and they would be like, this is brought to you by TypeFrag.com, get your Ventrilo server sort of thing. And they actually recorded like spots for us and everything. So it was really kind of neat.
And so how did you do the sales and marketing for something like this? You talked about the podcast sponsorship. What else was involved in getting this off the ground? And actually, maybe let's just back up a little bit. How long did it take you to build it?
So Ventrilo was software that was out there, and we basically we licensed the technology, and then we built the kind of the back end and the database to manage the servers. So it was like this thing you could host on your local machine, but obviously that would be slow. So we took it and put it, distributed it around the world. So I think we had, when I sold the company, I think we had 10 to 15 locations around the world and on like really, really fast connections. And we did all the like administration, like the system admin stuff, and built like this back end control panel. We were also one of the first to build kind of like a control panel too, in 2003, where you could actually manage the entire service. So we were very early as a web app.
Yeah, and you said multiple like locations?
Yeah, because latency is always like a huge thing in video gaming. So the closer the voice server was to you as a player, the faster the connection would be. So if you were in like California and connecting to a New York City server, that would be slow. So we had servers in Seattle, Washington, in LA, and stuff like that. So our West Coast gamers could use those.
This is a lot of logistics.
Like Australia, in Europe. Yeah, it was crazy.
That's a lot of logistics because you guys were 19, 20, 21 when you're building this.
Yeah, it was actually, it's funny because I went to Yale University and I started as a computer science major, and then kind of midway through my sophomore year, and TypeFrag started to catch on, and I basically had to drop my major and pick up psychology because I didn't have enough time to complete the CS requirements. So,
This was taking up all your time.
Yeah, it was definitely a full-time business while at work or while at school, and we had like employees and everything. It was crazy.
Now, you said it really started to take off. What does that mean? Because I'm looking at what it says right now. It says servers starting at $2 per month. That seems like a pretty low price point.
Well, yeah, back in the day, when I was still involved, it was basically we were charging about $5 per slot, or maybe $3 or $4 per slot. Now they're charging about 40 cents because there's so many more competitors. But at the time, we were so early, so we can kind of set the price.
Gotcha. And was that per slot per month? Is that how it worked?
Yeah, per slot per month, yeah. So it was recurring.
So you were doing recurring revenue in the early 2000. This would have been early 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be this December will be the 10th year anniversary of TypeFrag.
Wow. So early on for recurring revenue, and how did it do? Like, did you talk me through like launching and then growth and all that stuff?
Sure. So we started in early mid-December 2003. We just basically wanted to build this thing because we kind of saw it taking off. We launched it, I think, in March, and it was funny because I remember the first week, my partner was like, "This is a bust. No one's buying it." It took a full 5 days to get our first user, and then we got our first user, and then like 12 hours later, we got our second user, and then 6 hours later, we got our third, and then within like 2 weeks, we had maybe 20 to 30 accounts already set up, and then by that summer, we had hundreds. So we were going really fast, really quickly, and the main ways we were kind of advertising this thing was IRC is like a huge, I don't know if it is anymore, but it was like a huge gathering place for computer gamers. Like you had Counter-Strike channels, you had all these professional esports teams had their own channels, and their fans would kind of hang out in the channels and chat with the members and so forth. So we kind of like saw that as like a place to put our advertising, and no one was doing this at the time. So they, IRC channels have basically subject lines. So what we did is we like talked to all the top gaming teams that were just starting to kind of get sponsorships from like Intel and these bigger companies, and we said, can we be your voice over IP sponsor and give you guys free VoIP connections, and like, can you then advertise us on your website, your IRC channel, and your T-shirts when you go to different gaming events? So we got like all the best clans at the time, all the best teams, and just kind of went from there.
And did that actually provide a lot of growth? Like what provided the best growth?
I think it was definitely a combination between the podcasting stuff and the teams, because one of the things is like, the reason people buy Michael Jordan shoes is because it's Michael Jordan, and then the same thing in esports, like the average players want to use the same technology that the professionals use. So whether it's like a mouse, a mouse pad, a computer, a graphics card, or even a voice server. So yeah, it was definitely like a huge thing for us.
And this was right when that kind of professional team sponsorship was starting off. So you were really early then.
Early.
How important do you think that is? Because that's a kind of oft discussed thing is timing, and from the outside, sometimes it can seem like, the people that get in early definitely have an advantage over those that maybe come in later. Do you think that's true as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the one thing to say though is like for us, I think we might have been the 20th company to launch this service, but within like 3 months of launching, we were the biggest by far. So I mean, I think there is a combination of being early, but it's also being smart, having the best products, and then kind of knowing how to get the word out there. Something I talk about a lot kind of these days in 2013 is that there's just so much competition out there. Whatever market you enter, there's, a dozen competitors. And if you don't kind of know how to do sales or marketing well, you're going to just flounder. So I think it's definitely very important to kind of focus on those things.
So you think that the differentiator nowadays is sales and marketing? Yeah,
I mean, 90% I think of a business success, like going from zero to, X amount of money per month, I think is all sales and revenue. Like I do a little consulting, and, whenever I talk to startups or new founders or people like thinking about new ideas, I tell them to spend, 90% of their time thinking about how they're going to get users, because user acquisition at this point, I guess in the life of the web is like the number one thing you need to focus on.
Yeah.
And so it seems like, sorry, I'm just going to end with saying, it seems like people are way too focused on product development and design and all that stuff, but like just not focused enough on the sales and the marketing, and especially new entrepreneurs.
Interesting. Especially interesting coming from the Carbon Made guy. So maybe we should well, first of all, let's round off TypeFrag. Like what happened with TypeFrag? How long did it run, and then you decided to sell it?
Yeah, so it's still going today. My former partner still runs the thing. I think there's somewhere between, I think, 30 and 50 employees right now. And the business is now located in Cleveland, Ohio. But we worked together for about 4 years, and then kind of decided to part ways. And it was just around that time when I met Dave and Jason, who then I worked on CarbonMade with. So it was kind of like a nice segue into that.
And did you end up selling your half of TypeFrag? Like how did things like that work when partnerships decide to move on?
Yeah, I think Dave and I, Dave, the TypeFrag Dave, both of us we lived in different cities. We had different kind of ideas for the business, and we were making a lot of money as 21-year-olds, like a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And we just kind of felt as if one person needed to own the company and kind of just run it themselves. So, that we had a kind of, I don't know how to say bidding war in a nice way, but we had a bidding war. Mm-hmm. And he came out on top in the end. But I mean, we were both very kind of happy with the exit. So. So a bidding war in the sense that you were interested in running TypeFrag, he was interested in running TypeFrag. They both raised money. So TypeFrag, all my businesses have always been bootstrapped, and so was TypeFrag. But we both raised money to buy the other one out. So
gotcha.
It was kind of like we each had our own set of investors, and then it was just, I think it was like about a 3-month process of like, here's my offer, and then here's my offer plus X, and went back and forth for about 3 months.
You guys had a funding battle royale.
Yeah, it was crazy. And we were 21 years old at the time. So.
Well, what's interesting about that is that's every time you talk, I keep thinking, man, these are really crazy lessons for someone so young to be learning. But because often there's people in the business or at the top of the business, and the business needs room, like leadership room or management room, or just needs, something different. And sometimes if there's like 2 partners, for example, that are kind of holding on to those top spots, the business doesn't have room to grow. Definitely. And it sounds like you guys figured that out.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I could go back in time, I think TypeFrag is an amazing business, and it's even, much bigger today. I think if we were a little bit older, maybe, if we had 5-10 years more experience, we would have made it work. But yeah, at the time, it needed to be run by one guy.
Yeah. And so you mentioned meeting these new guys and starting CarbonMade. How did that happen?
So I forget exactly how I reached out to them, but I needed business cards for TypeFrag or something. This was the day of business cards, or the time when people still had them.
Yeah.
And I remember that I reached out to someone, and then they referred me to this guy, Dave, who is the creative director and co-founder of CarbonMade. And, we started talking a little bit. And then when I left TypeFrag, I reached out to him and Jason. They both ran kind of a design ad agency sort of thing, consulting company. And I reached out to them to see if they wanted to work with me on some design and development stuff for a new startup idea I had. That startup wasn't CarbonMade, but it was kind of, if familiar with Foursquare at all, think about Foursquare, but just the internet or just the web component and not the mobile component.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the 3 of us worked on that for like 4 months or so. And then they reached out to me and asked if I wanted to join their consulting company as a 1/3 partner and help them run the business. And because this thing we were working on hadn't even launched yet, I decided, that makes sense. So I joined them.
And was the company called CarbonMade before you joined?
No, it was a company called Interface. It was a design and ad agency company. And so I think this was maybe like 2000s. Midway through 2006, and they had Dave, who was a designer and creative director. He had built kind of like the first iteration of CarbonMade on his own, as kind of to manage his own online portfolio. But at the same time, it was kind of a small side project for him, and he was, they were both focused more on the, they're both more focused on kind of the ad agency thing, and they wanted to bring in another guy that could help them build CarbonMade.
So the idea for Carbon Made was kind of already there, and then they said, "Why don't you come and help them build that app?" Is that the idea?
Yeah. Because at the time when I joined, we still had clients and everything, so it was like a lot of client work. And if you've ever done client work, it kind of takes up all your time, and it's really difficult to kind of build an app at the same time. So I joined to help them kind of bring Carbon Made to life. And that was kind of my job over the first year while they were kind of finishing up a lot of the client work.
Huh. That's interesting too, because, that's a lot of our listeners are in that space. They're doing consulting work. And I think this would be good to talk about, because I think people have a hard time sometimes, or at least I do, thinking about working with other people. So, for myself, I'm a creative person. I like building things. And I'm just like everyone else. I'm limited by my time. But I'm always just thinking, I'll just do that myself. I'll just, I'll work on this myself. And I keep kind of grinding away at it, but it's either really slow or it doesn't happen. In this case, well, in both cases, you've partnered up with people. And in this case, they actually hired you to kind of, while they did the consulting work, they hired you to kickstart this new idea.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've actually been talking to a few friends actually last night over beers about one designer, one developer, and they're both kind of looking to potentially work on something on the side. But I told them both that it's really, really hard to do by yourself because one, you have limited hours, but you don't have anyone else to push you. But if you can only work 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week, it's nice to have someone else who can also put in another 5 or 10 hours a week as well. So I've always looked at it that way. Like it's better to have, a smaller chunk of the pie, but, increase the likelihood of being successful.
Yeah. And did you ever have the fear though that people have about, giving up control or finding the right person, or like, was that ever part of it, or did you always just have a sense of who would make a good partner for you?
I think I've always just had a sense of who would make a good partner. For me, I'm technical, nowadays, but back then, I didn't really program. I did some design, but very limited. So I always, needed to work with people that could do those two things. And a lot of designers and developers believe they know how to do sales and marketing and user acquisition, but don't. So I think it's always good to kind of pair with someone who has opposite skills of you.
Yeah. And do you think that's a good mix, is someone who's maybe more interested in doing sales and marketing, and then someone who's more interested in building and coding and things like that?
I think the team that we had at Carbon Made was, and I wrote about this a while ago, was the most ideal team you could have, because it was basically one business guy, one ridiculously talented developer, and one ridiculously talented designer. And together, you can basically do anything. You know what I mean? You can cover any aspect of a web app or a business, period. So, if you can get those three guys and give each one of them a third of the company, you're good to go.
And were you the business guy in that equation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you decide that? I think that's there's a lot of, I've been on computers since 1985. Love computers, love technology. But the identity, especially on the web, the way you define yourself, are you a developer, are you a designer, and then are you a business guy? Sometimes that can be a little scary, saying, do I want to say this is my identity now, that I'm just this guy? How does that kind of work itself out in your mind?
Yeah, I think it definitely, just being the business guy definitely affected me a lot kind of personally for my years at Carbon Made. I think that I always felt like I wanted to contribute more to the product from a design and development point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So when I ultimately left the company, 4.5 years later, the first thing I did was pick up programming, and that's kind of what I spent all of 2012 doing. But
teaching yourself how to program.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So that was something that you were doing. You were being the business guy at Carbon Made, but
Yep.
eventually you said you wanted to kind of learn this other thing and maybe shift gears a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, my years at Carbon, I think, were some of my favorite years of my life, and I think we built really, really awesome stuff that people love. Like, I mean, we had the best users. Everyone says that, but we really did. Like, creative people that were just so nice. And I always got, working on a creative product all the time with creative users. You're like, damn, I wish I could make something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I sold out of Carbon as I did with TypeFrag, and I had kind of a cushion. So I felt like the next thing I wanted to do was learn to program. To kind of be able to build stuff for the web. So.
And before we go too far, like before we leave Carbon Made, because you just had that comment before that sales and marketing is 90%, and people are focusing too much on design and product. And Carbon Made is, I don't know if we've explained what it is, but it's online portfolios for designers, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's kind of known as a really well-designed, like a great product, kind of a crazy culture, really kind of cutting edge, especially on design and things like that. How do you?
That's all Dave. Dave is, a brilliant designer, and it's funny because he was doing all this stuff, in 2005, 2006, again before anyone else was doing it. Like these bright colors, these huge icons, the big fonts, the whole style, the look and feel. Like he was the guy who started that.
Yeah. And so
the font choices, everything.
How did you sell it? Because you've got this beautiful product.
Yeah.
What were some of the challenges with actually selling Carbon Made? How did you guys get it actually to be a company that made money?
Sure. Well, I think so. The early days when we first launched, we were basically the first online portfolio. So we had kind of early users from that. But again, like when you're the first, you also run into the trouble that like people aren't searching for you because they don't know you exist. So we spent a lot of time and kind of money on SEO and paying for advertising on Google and getting into design blogs and featuring good artists so that people would come to CardMade to, people want to host their work where other good artists are hosting their work, similar to TypeFrag, where they want to use the same services that professionals are using.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of that. And then, just a lot of pushing it locally. So I started doing a lot of talks at like SVA and like NYU and all these places and just try to get the word out there.
And what's the typical customer? Like what pain are you solving for people with Carbon Made? Like why were they coming to you and shelling out money for this?
I think the biggest thing was that it was kind of the easiest do-it-yourself kind of portfolio system. So there were a lot of other ones out there where you could customize every single little thing and like edit the HTML and do all that stuff. CardMade has never been that. It's always been you just upload your work and we display it really, really beautifully. And you can toggle like 1, 2, or 3 different kind of settings, and that's it. You don't have to, learn web development to have a portfolio with CardMade. And then we also host everything for you.
Yeah.
So it's just like for people that are just, painters or photographers who don't want to, learn how to develop for the web, it was just the easiest solution.
Although now it would probably be really difficult to start a company like Carbon Made.
Yeah, it'd be impossible.
Yeah. It's good, I think, that we mentioned that because I think that's hard. People feel like, in some ways because the tools have gotten so much better and easier, and people go, oh, I could start a CMS for editors. That would be, that'd be awesome. But
yeah, I mean, we when we launched, there was basically us, and then shortly after Behance launched, that just sold to Adobe recently for a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we definitely had multiple competitors start launching like every few months. But Behance and we just got so big so fast that these other guys just couldn't compete.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, let's move on to your current project, and I think we'll end part one with kind of the story of what's going on with Uncover, and in part two, I want to talk about some tactics. I want to talk about sales, maybe even like product development, and you've written a couple posts on that. But let's talk about Uncover. What is Uncover? What's the story behind that?
So, part of the story for Uncover is something I've been thinking about for like the last 5 to 10 years, but I've always run operations at, TypeFrag and CarbMate and so forth, and done all the hiring and all the employee management stuff. Basically all the HR stuff was just part of my job. And, we were always very focused on employee happiness and, making sure everyone had what they needed and that they felt included, and we'd go on company outings and socially and all that stuff. But a lot of companies out there, they basically don't know what to do. So part of Uncover, like the idea is to address those needs, and basically to increase happiness and wellness at your company. And that was something that I've always been really passionate about. And my current co-founder, Mike, has also been that way.
And so how is Uncover to achieve that? Like what does Uncover do that increases happiness?
Sure. So I won't spoil all the future plans, but
you're going to spoil a few of them though, right?
Yeah, I can tell you guys currently about what we're doing. So we launched in January, and the idea was to be able to quickly give your employees perks and rewards that actually were meaningful. So for years, there have been these kind of perks companies that they basically gave you a large coupon book to a bunch of different places, like 10% off Six Flags and all these different services. But no employee ever used them. I know from friends of mine who run companies whose companies are listed at a discount price, but they never get orders. So we thought, one, there's very little value there for the employee. Like, what can we do that's better and more impactful, like that everyone would, come to work and be like, this is awesome. So we launched this perks program where employers can give actual things to their employees. So, right now we have, I think, about a dozen different categories, but everything from music to cleaning services to gym memberships to food membership, like things, to coffee and tea, to books, to video, all sorts of different things. And the main difference being is that the employer covers kind of the complete cost of the good.
Gotcha. How did you wire all of that up? Like, did you have to do deals with suppliers, or is there like a API for perks somewhere?
There isn't. So, a lot of it is that we had to go in and make deals, but also there's kind of some, like manual process to it. Kind of a combination of both, but with the bigger guys, we have a lot of deals in place. So
with like iTunes and Starbucks,
and Audio, and those bigger guys.
Yeah,
and then so the system's like actually fairly complicated on our side. And when people look at it, they think it's not much of a technology solution, but it actually really is.
So and right now there's some manual grunt work in this too.
Yeah, there is, and we're trying to kind of. And Paul Graham actually just wrote an interesting post about this about 2 weeks ago, and then Jason Fried followed up with it too. But like the idea of starting manual as much as you can, and then only optimizing with code as like something becomes like really tedious, and that's kind of what the approach we've taken. So it was very manual 3 months ago, and today it's less manual, and every kind of week it's becoming less manual for us.
Yeah. Cool. And
but we're seeing like amazing adoption rates. It's crazy. Like for all the companies that have signed up, employees are redeeming like 85% of the perks, which is awesome. Yeah.
And so it's live right now. You have customers signing up already. When did you launch?
We launched, I want to say about 2.5 months ago. So that would be April 2013.
Okay.
And we started in mid-January. So it's been something that we've been thinking about in parts of 2012, but we didn't kind of set out to begin building the thing until January 2013.
And how do you make money? What's the business model?
So we charge kind of just a standard service fee of $5 per employee per month, which is actually interesting is because that's what you're seeing a lot of companies do these days, these enterprise companies.
Mm-hmm.
They're just charging per seat.
Yeah.
As opposed to just, $50 a month for 10 users and then $100 a month for, 25 users and then $150 a month unlimited users. They're charging specifically a single price per user.
Yeah. Although I know some companies that are actually now going the other way. They were at a per seat, and now they're going back to more of a general. What do you think? Is $5 a month per user? Is that a business model that's going to be able to scale? Like, is there that you think that's going to continue to work?
It seems to scale so far for us. We have companies of all different sizes, and the nice thing for our point of view is that a 50-person company hopefully will grow into a 75-person company within a year or so, or 2 years. So that's additional revenue for us. Whereas if we were just like free, or not free, but a set price for your company of over 50 employees, we'd see a lot less of a LTV for that.
Yeah.
Company. Yeah. And
do you have an idea of how long LTV is going to be? Like what is LTV right now and what the potential is?
So far, we haven't lost a customer yet. So,
you've got Perfect.
Yeah, we've got Perfect, but we've also only been around for like 2.5 months.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that it's going to be really high for us, just because, enterprise companies where you're giving things to your employees, it's really difficult to then take them away.
Yeah.
Because if you're giving everyone, music for free, so they can listen to it at work, it's hard to be like the next day, sorry guys, we're not giving it to you.
And is it enterprise companies that are buying this, or is it people in the startup space?
So we're still kind of determining like our ideal customer, I guess you would say, but it's tend to be tech companies right now and ad agencies. So companies that have kind of retention issues, or they care a lot about company culture and they want to kind of better the life of their employees.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been great though. We've been dealing with a lot of like tech startups in New York City and San Francisco and other places in the United States, and so far everyone is like super, super excited about it. Like the employees love it, the employers love it too, because like at the end of the day, it's such a small percentage of someone's salary. Say someone makes $100,000 a year, you give them music that costs an extra $10 a month to you.
Yeah.
But the benefit of it is huge, because you could raise their salary $10 a month, but you could also give them something where it's impactful. So
yeah, the value of the $10 music is definitely greater than the value of a $10 raise. Exactly. That's so funny how that psychology works.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about sales and how you're selling this, but let's do that in part 2. So anyone that's listening, check back next week for part 2, where we discuss basically sales tactics, and then we're going to get into some product development tactics too. My oh my, Spencer Fry. What a great guest. You'll definitely want to come back next week for part 2. You can follow Spencer on Twitter at Spencer Fry. You can follow me, Justin, on Twitter as well at MIJustin. And we even have a Twitter handle for the show at Product People TV. Talking about Twitter, if you go on Twitter and thank our sponsor at Sprintly right now, I'd love you forever. And if you like the show, please give us a review in iTunes. It's as easy as clicking 5 stars. We'll see you next week for part 2.
Podcast hosting is provided by Transistor.fm. They host our MP3 files, generate our RSS feed, provide us with analytics, and help us distribute the show to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. If you want to start your own podcast or you want to switch to Transistor, go to transistor.fm/Justin and get 15% off your first year.